Hi, everyone. Welcome to the moon forecast for the full moon in Aquarius for July, is it 23rd, 2021. I'm Kendall Shahan with the Bohemian Tarot Girl. This is Amy, my co host. Amy, give a shout out for yourself.
Hi, I'm Amy Amonette, and I am an intuitive energy coach at Wise Moon Energy on Facebook, if you want to look that up. And I've been leading moon circles now for a couple of years. And so we always get together to kind of talk about the upcoming energy and how you can best align with it and make it work for you.
I love it. Um, Please remember to like and share our YouTube video. We really appreciate the support. We also have a workbook for these moons that's free for you. The link is in our bio. Sign up, follow along with us, and do the activities. So let's get started and talk about this full moon, Amy. What are you feeling?
Yeah. Oh boy. This moon, I mean, we just moved into, the sign of Leo, and that's a fire sign. And I just feel like this moon really embodies kind of this, there's a really strong energy to this moon. Um, it's really exciting. It's really propelling things forward for us, which is interesting because full moons, we are always looking at releasing and leaving things behind. But this moon's really, there's a lot going on with it. And it's a really interesting one to begin with because we have two full moons in Aquarius happening,
Yes, we do.
which does not happen usually. There's usually like one moon a year in a sign
Yeah.
that will kind of duplicate. I believe last time it was in Libra. So it's really interesting that this is full moon in Aquarius and we get it twice. And so it creates kind of this energetic portal.
Yeah.
Another portal. We've been in lots of portals this year. So it's creating this kind of energetic portal where we have a beginning and an ending. And so this forward momentum that's happening, I think that we're going to notice that there's a significant change in ourselves, especially that happens between this full moon in Aquarius and the full moon in Aquarius that happens in about 4 weeks. So
Yep. And it happens on August 22nd. So that's when we'll
yeah.
see it again.
And for those who aren't familiar with astrology, and each sign, because they're part of a circle, so each sign, there's 12 signs, you take the degrees. And so a sign will have within it 30 different degrees. And so this moon is happening at 1 degrees of Aquarius and Leo, um, because the sun is in Leo. And when full moons, we have the sun in one sign, which is Leo, and then the moon is in the exact opposite. So they're both happening at 1 degrees, which is the very, very beginning of that that sign for both of them. And then when we get to the end, we're going to be at really close to 30 degrees.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a really interesting difference in the energy and what it feels like.
Oh,
Um,
definitely. Hopefully, we'll see a pretty dramatic shift over that period. That's what I'm hoping.
yeah, it's it's gonna, yeah, there's so much that's been happening um lately. And I know we've talked about, if you've been following these things, we've talked about all of kind of the shedding that's been happening this year and the letting go of narratives that don't suit
Mhm.
you, and belief systems that are no longer working, and the way that you show up in the world that may not be authentic to you. And with this moon being in Aquarius, Aquarius is all about kind of this forward thinking, futuristic, it's revolutionary energy. It's asking you to look at things differently than maybe how you've looked at them before, or to consider things in a way that maybe um, seemed really far outreaching. And it's now showing you how maybe those ideas aren't so bizarre after all. It's kind of asking you to step out of the box a little bit and get out of your comfort zone. And it's also, Aquarius is very involved with the collective and the
Mhm.
community and what's best for society as a whole. And so we have this energy in Aquarius. And then on the opposite side, we have Leo. And Leo is all about the self.
Yep.
Um, you know, it, we always joke that people born into the sign of Leo are kind of, they can be a little extra
Oh, for sure.
and very like kind of step into their ego
In the
a little more, and they
spotlight.
want to be recognized and appreciated. Um, but really what it is it's asking you to kind of, you know, Leo energy sparks in you like, what are your unique strengths, and what is it that makes your light shine brighter, and how can you shine your light brighter into the world, and how does letting your light shine affect the other people in your environment.
Mhm.
um, so we have these kind of opposing things, but they really work together. I always like Leo and Aquarius energy because I think it really asks us to step up into more of ourselves, and to stop kind of like hiding or diminishing who we are and how we approach our place in society and in the world and in our purpose.
100%. And this first half of July was really, I felt that's what I got mainly from it, was a lot about communication and making sure that you were communicating your needs, and that is allowing you to step into your true self. Because if you're not, with the
Mhm.
people that are closest to you, if you're not being able to express yourself, then you aren't living your true self. And so here we are, and we're coming into this new energy, and we're really asking for you to like step out. And that's where I think the release is for me. It was, that's what I kept pulling, is that you needed to release like tension in your life. And that communication piece is key, and that's maybe what is holding back some people. I know.
I think so.
Yeah, I know my nephew and I were talking just yesterday about communicating, and he was talking about it with his relationship, and just some of those blocks that are preventing him from moving forward are these simple little communication pieces that are holding you back. And it's because he's not really living in his true self. So really looking at your needs, how you can communicate, and what you really need that your other people in your life to understand about you is key.
Yeah. And I think that that kind of illuminates a lot of, you know, when we're growing up and we are trying to find our place in the world and we're trying to figure out who we are and what our own, you know, personal expression is that a lot of times we tend to do things or create ways of being in order to feel accepted by those around us,
Yeah.
and or to limit who we are so that we're more palpable to society.
100%.
um, and I know, especially on a personal note, like the way, I mean, I grew up in a really religious family, and some of the more quirky sides to me are some of the interests that I was really gravitated towards, things like astrology or energy work, or even like discussions about past lives. Like that was not accepted in the community that I was in. And so I held a lot of that in. And I think that people do that in so many ways where they feel like they can't express who they are truly to the core because they're worried about not being accepted
Yeah.
by those around them. And the more that you start allowing yourself to align with what you want and who you feel you truly are, you'll find that the right people are going to be there for you.
Hmm.
And if there are people who don't accept you for who you are, then those aren't your people. And they don't appreciate or love you. They appreciate and love who they think you are. And that's a completely different situation.
100%.
So I think that this moon is really going to highlight um, some of your personal strengths, your um, likes, your ambitions, your talents. And it's going to offer you an opportunity to really embrace those parts about you that maybe you didn't think were so acceptable
Yeah.
by others, and you know let it become more, let yourself become more and be bigger and bolder.
I like it. Now, we were talking earlier, and you had looked back to the conjunction that happened at the new year and the connection. How
So
are you
there's
feeling about
really,
that?
we talked about how this is moon is happening at 1 degree of
Yeah.
Aquarius. And the interesting synchronicity of this, because there's always these weird synchronicities with these moons and how the energy links itself to each other, is that back in December 21st of 2020, we had a big event, and it was one that a lot of people were talking about called the Great Conjunction.
Mhm.
And that happened at 1 degree of Aquarius, when Jupiter and Saturn came into alignment. And that only happens every 20 years.
Yeah.
So that was a big deal. It was also the first time in over 200 years that it changed from the element that it had been happening in. So you can go back and listen to our video that we did on that, because we did a full video on the Great Conjunction, which has a lot of information, which is going to be pertaining for 20 to 200 years. This is a huge transition that happens in these outer lying planets, and the previous 200 years, that alignment had happened in earth signs, which was all about security and money and finance and your tangible world. And now it's shifted and it's happened in Aquarius, which is an air sign. And that's more about ideas and expansion and um, society. And so we're seeing a shift in the collective that is gradually taking place. So that happened at 1 degree of Aquarius back in December. And now this moon is happening at 1 degree of Aquarius. And it's kind of giving this a little insight as to what is changing within us, and in our personal experience. You may have some realizations occur with this moon, that are kind of leading you towards, sounds like a big word, but almost towards like what your destiny is and how you're going to fulfill that over the next several years. Because we're in this big evolution process energetically, especially, which you change the energy and you change everything around you. But I feel like this energy is the thing that's changing first. And then we're going to start seeing how that ripples out to our environment and our societies and our world. So it's really a big change. So we're just at like this little tiny spark of what is happening. But if you look back at from December until now, you're probably going to realize that you personally have changed a lot. There's been a lot of releasing and
Mhm.
kind of changing how you view yourself, how you view what's important to you. And
100%.
especially if you've been following these moons, I mean, there's definitely a progression that has been happening with things. And so this is a really exciting time, and it's really an important moon to pay attention to, I think.
Oh, for
So,
sure. With
yeah.
that connection to the conjunction and the fact that we're having another one that's coming up and there's a portal, you know,
Mhm.
I'd really focus on looking at what you need to do within this time frame. Um, and I'd recommend, if you're out there and you use tarot cards or oracle cards, with tarot, you get a little more of a story that can help you kind of connect and look at your inner self and what you need to go through and heal right now. I would highly recommend that you guys go through that, do the prompts that Amy has provided as far as the journal, and really just work out whatever needs to be kind of just reviewed in your life. So,
Yeah, there's a lot that is happening on either side of this moon too. The moon energy lasts 3 days.
mhm,
So you don't have to do things exactly on the full moon. It's a 3-day energy. And then it is this creates a cycle. So we've
yep,
mentioned this before, is that you have the cycle from full moon to new moon. And so whatever you release is going to diminish until you get to the new moon, which is dark. Um, and then we also have the cycle from full moon to full moon. And this one, because it's another full moon in Aquarius, it's going to be really interesting
Yep.
because we're going to have two cycles of similar energy. Um, Not exactly the same, but very similar in the feel, which is just giving that extra boost. And
Mhm.
then you have the cycle that's the year cycle from full moon in Aquarius now to full moon in Aquarius in a year.
Yeah.
And so whatever you're working on with this moon, like there's going to be a cycle until it's completed. And that depends on, you know, how big, how big of a release it is.
Mhm.
And, we talk about it. And if you're in my Wise Moon Energy group, I posted something recently that said I release all the versions of myself that I created to survive. And that post has been getting a lot of attention because I think so many people are realizing that they have become people based on their circumstances and that they're now working on realigning with their true self, the one that was not involved in trauma or did not have parental conditioning or did not have societal expectations placed on them. And it's more of, this idea of becoming who you really are. It's like you already are this person. It's more like a deconstruction of who you're not. And so when I was looking at this moon, a lot of the journal prompts are like, well, who do you think you are? And is that really who you are? And is who you think you are what you are presenting to those around you, or are you limiting who you are? And so if you really want to dive deeper into these journal prompts, like please download the workbook, like take your time to go through the practice of it, and really get intimate with yourself and ask yourself these questions, because these aren't questions that you would normally just sit down and ponder. Like,
Yeah.
this is deep, deep work. Um,
Yeah.
but
It,
getting back to this moon, sorry.
oh no, it's totally good. I like a good
I
rant.
go on tangents all the time. I start
Yeah.
talking everything that pops into my head. An Aries Mercury, it moves fast. um, I the right before this moon, we have the moon is conjunct in Pluto. So Pluto's in Aquarius, so the moon is going to pass through that. And that has to do with like transformation and
Mhm.
the process of transformation and moving you forward. And then we have the moon, the full moon, which is exact. And then right after that, the moon is going to conjunct Saturn, which is retrograde. And that's also in Aquarius. And so it's really coming into contact with some pretty major players.
Mhm.
And the moon in Pluto only happens when it's conjunct, it happens once a month. So you may feel that energy, but having it be the full moon conjunct, like that adds a little extra to it.
Mhm.
Um, and the moon in Saturn Saturn has to do with limitations. So you're going to be shown at the beginning, like, this is the transformation. Then you're going to have the full moon where it's like asking you the big questions and what are you holding back? And then you're going to have the moon conjunct Saturn, and it's going to show you maybe some of the things that are keeping you stuck.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot to kind of navigate with all of this energy. Um, and it may bring up some emotions, it may bring up some tensions. Um, and that's why I think what you were saying, it's really key to keep the communication in a good place
Yeah.
and to be honest. Um, and I mean, there's good ways and bad ways of communicating your needs.
100%. Yeah. I'm not telling
And
you to just bulldoze over everyone, but
yeah. Especially with Leo energy, like it can make you a little more self-focused.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean that you can kind of make yourself the center of the world. I mean, it's
Yeah.
important to honor yourself and what you need and to ask for those things and to communicate openly and honestly. But you're also viewing things through your lens, and you cannot project your stuff onto someone else. So own,
100%.
own your own, own your own stuff, and
That
be
was
conscious of how what you are perceiving and how you are behaving is affecting those around you, and have some grace for them too. I mean, they all are seeing things through their own lens as well. So,
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah. Just because, with my nephew, that was like the key thing was he didn't realize he admittedly, talked about how he was being super, kind of like almost selfish in what he wants because he had envisioned his life being this certain way. And I said, darling, does your boyfriend have that same vision? And he goes, I don't know. I said,
I mean,
you should probably start, maybe write a letter so you don't get heated and just start an open line of communication. And so they started that just yesterday. And
oh, good.
yeah, I highly recommend that. If
Yeah.
you're struggling to communicate with someone, take a moment, both write a letter to each other, talk about how you feel, and try to get down to the nitty gritty of it. Because most of the times, the people that we are with have no idea what our actual goals are. And we have this weird envision that, of course, they would know exactly what we want.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And
And
be
I
on
think so, and just speaking from personal experience too, sometimes communicating your own needs can be really challenging
yeah.
because maybe at some point your needs were not made a priority. And so you feel like what you want isn't as important as what somebody else wants or what somebody else wants you to be to them. Um, and a lot of, I think, especially for women, I know I always talk about women, but there's been this generational thing
Mhm.
about women's place. And for a lot of time, women didn't have a voice. And that, I think, on a cellular memory level has kind of carried through where it is very hard sometimes to speak up and own your own voice. Um, and I like, especially for me, and this is something I'm just realizing, is that I was terrified of doing these videos. I mean, when I first did a moon circle, I like was breaking out in a cold sweat, worried how I was going to speak in front of a group. And now we do this on a regular basis. And what I'm finding is that the more you use your voice, the
Mhm.
easier it becomes, and that you do have something valid to say. And there are people who are looking for whatever you're offering. I mean, it doesn't have to be what you're speaking. It can be art, it can be music, it can be a business idea, it can be any way that you are called to show up and express yourself. And I know I looked back about 6 months when we had the Aquarius sun and the Leo full moon. And a lot of what we talked about then had to do with imposter syndrome.
Yep.
And I know that that
On
flares
top
up
of
for
that.
people a lot. And this idea of, well, why would I do that? Because somebody else is already doing it and they're already really good. Or who am I to be an expert in this? Or
Mhm.
who am I to do this thing? Because, in your mind, you don't feel like you're worthy or that you're qualified or that you are an expert, and nobody's really an expert. I mean, that takes time. You start you start off small and you gradually build upon what you are working on. um, and it got me thinking that like there are a lot of people who have been holding themselves back because they have these inner dialogues of more of what they're not than of what they are.
Mhm.
um, and then I was looking at, okay, well, if that were the case, just for an example, I mean, yeah, we had, you know, Michelangelo, who was considered a great master painter. Well, what if he was considered so great and everybody thought he was so great that Picasso never decided to do any art? Um, and you can't compare what you have to offer with what somebody else has already put out on the table because you have your own unique expression and your own unique gifts and your own unique talents, and those are needed by somebody.
100%.
And you're really doing a disservice to yourself and to others if you're not allowing that to be a free energy that you put out.
Mm-hmm.
So keep that in mind for this moon. um, and then when I was thinking about it with this also, because sometimes we do activities, and I used to teach summer camps, and you have a lot of kids and they like would, you know, kind of say mean things about each other. And one of the things we would do, I know, one of the things we would do is if somebody said something mean about somebody, they had to say something positive. They
Mm-hmm.
had to say 3 positive things about that person in order to make up for the negative thing that they had said.
Yeah.
And so I almost want to challenge everybody that if you start over the next several weeks getting some of that negative thought process, that you immediately catch it and then you say 3 positive things about yourself,
Mm-hmm.
or 3 positive aspects about who you are, and start changing that relationship of your dialogue and your thought processes. So
I love it. 100%. Uh-oh, I have somebody at the door, but
that's okay. And then look at my notes here for a second. Are you back?
yeah, I'm back.
Okay. And then I also was thinking that you're not going to have these inclinations or these ideas or these feelings that you should do something if spirit hasn't given you what you need in order to do them.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're not going to be like, you should do this, but you don't have the qualifications to do it. Like there's a reason why you're called or propelled towards something.
Yeah.
And you have to have that kind of little bit of trust that what you want is because it's meant for you.
Mm-hmm.
On a higher level, like of course, I mean, there's lots of things I want that are probably negotiable, but then there are those but then there are those things that you just feel so deep in your soul as being part of your soul's path, that you really shouldn't be ignoring or putting to the side.
Yeah.
There's a reason that you feel so strongly about that in your life.
Yes, I would definitely say everyone should be listening to the calling that they have, and don't let anyone tell you it's too small or too big. Whatever you feel called to, that's where you should be going. Follow your intuition 100% with that. So I drew a card. I was sitting here shuffling all along, and I told you this is a card that prior to doing this video and doing the journal prompts, I pull cards to kind of get a read on the energy for whatever moon we're doing. And I told Amy I pulled this card, and here it is again. So it's the 10 of Cups. And this is just about like happiness, fulfillment, in regards to like relationships. It's looked at like the marriage card, the happiness cards, but it's also a fulfillment card as far as like your wishes kind of come true, and there's that end, like achieving that end goal. And so it's a really positive card. I like it. And the fact that it came again, extra. So yeah, it's totally perfect. Just do your work and you're going to have some good results. So, well, thank you, Amy. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I hope you have a great full moon. Make sure you follow us online. I'm at the Bohemian Tarot Girl. Amy's at Wise Moon Energy on Facebook. All right, we'll see y'all later. Bye.